Hey guys, we're here for our next session with Sune Na, head of digital assets at TD Ameritrade. Can you guys confirm that you can hear her? And can you say something?
Hey everyone.
All right, can you guys hear? Just post it in the ask a question section since the chat is broken. We've pinged Crowdcast. Hopefully they will fix it. Okay, audio is good. You're good to start.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hi everybody. My name is Sunaina. As Shinju mentioned, I'm the head of digital assets at TD Ameritrade. I'm delighted to be here. Let no one ever say that our community isn't committed to its craft. Here we are on a Saturday, Sunday, all committed to learning and connecting with each other, which is, I think, pretty remarkable. And I just want to start off with kudos to Shinju, who's just done such an amazing job assembling a high quality agenda with amazing speakers and topics and reflecting the diversity of the crypto community at large. I was able to catch a lot of the sessions yesterday and the ones today, and I think my brain cells are doing a little bit of a happy dance because I'm finally pivoting from binge watching to binge learning. So thank you, Shinju, for bringing us all together. As mentioned, my role at TD Ameritrade, what I hope to share with you over the next few minutes and then look forward to your questions and a conversation thereafter is really, our perspectives and learnings as we've leaned into this nascent technology and asset class. We heard the fantastic conversation that Rebecca facilitated with Commissioner Pierce. It's not easy to overcome the inertia when people and institutions are comfortable in doing things the way they've been done and have been reaping a lot of benefits and productive results. So trying to embark on anything new, as I often say, is like pushing molasses up a sandy hill. But want to kind of share with you a little bit about the why and the how an incumbent ought to lean in and really embrace this new technology and the emergence of this new asset class, and kind of share from our learnings. And I hope to frame it up in a way that gives you nuggets that you can then utilize in the work that you're doing as operators or investors, or potentially looking to partner with some of the incumbents. What are some things that could be productive to you in your journey? And then the key part of our strategy and approach really is underscored by the voice of the client. So I'll talk a lot about how it was really client driven, that it was really client based feedback and client focused innovation that led us to enter into this category, but how that continuous feedback from our clients is an anchor to our strategy and approach, and some of the things that we've learned from it that hopefully you can absorb and find value and integrate into the work that y'all are doing. So just quickly, a little bit about me before I jump into it, just for context. Personally, I kind of proverbial fell into the rabbit hole end of 2011, early 2012, of all things, heard about something called Bitcoin at a holiday party. I was then in investment banking, so don't hold that against me. So you can imagine what a bunch of investment bankers were saying about Bitcoin back then. I didn't know much about it, but all I know is I spent an entire weekend, just researching and trying to kind of going down the rabbit hole, trying to learn, and content wasn't as ubiquitous as it is now. And, much to the chagrin of my boyfriend at that time, who kept berating me about why I care so much about Bitcoin. But, I kind of get the last laugh, as I like to say, the best trade of my life. I dumped the boyfriend and kept the Bitcoin, and it's worked out pretty well for me. And majority of my career has really been at the intersection of finance and technology, and really figuring out how to apply and commercialize the best technology of the day to help break down barriers that still persist in capital markets and financial services as a whole. I'm the daughter of first-generation immigrants who are also small business owners, so I see firsthand, or have seen firsthand, that access and opportunity are pretty uneven. So I'm very motivated and mission driven about the fact that how do you level the playing field and enable more Main Street consumers to have the same access to kind of take charge of their, financial future. So that kind of led me to, to working with, with lots of interesting people, interesting projects, and have always, kind of worked with technology, but as a builder, operator, investor, and now really as an advisor to many of the wonderful folks doing great work in this category. I'm going to flip over to my slides, so hopefully I will do this right. So just bear with me. Okay. I don't have the easiest name in the baby book, so I've put my handle at the bottom, both Twitter and Telegram. So feel free to connect and we can continue the conversation beyond the session today. Before I dig into the content, just want to level set and just share with everybody a little bit about TD Ameritrade. If you aren't familiar, we are one of the largest brokerages with a footprint in the United States and a growing footprint in Asia. And we have the immense honor of serving over 15 million retail investors and 10,000 registered advisors. So our focus is really the individual investor, not, we don't cater to the institutions. And that focus on the clients that we serve really is an anchor in terms of how we think about engaging with this technology. But with anything, our goal is how do you enable access for mainstream consumers who otherwise are left out, but doing it with utmost safety and soundness. In fact, as I was preparing for this, it's actually a very opportune time to be talking about the intersection of, DeFi and how incumbents can be engaged in this ecosystem, because I don't know if many of you know this, but it actually coincides with a very important event called May Day. So yesterday, May 1st, marked the 45th anniversary of a rule change that fundamentally changed capital markets forever. And that's pretty, astounding to think about, and what really happened was on May 1st, 1975, there was a rule change. And that was an important rule that really created this industry we today know as discount brokerage. Prior to 1975, if you wanted to buy a stock, right, of IBM or GE, companies of those times, you really had to be like, a big whale. Like you had to have certain amount of access and money and clout to Wall Street to be able to engage in the capital markets. And it was actually very expensive to do it, right? So retail investors, everyday consumers were largely left out. What that rule change enabled was, for the first time, the pricing model went from marketplace pricing model instead of being a fixed pricing model. And that little rule change completely and drastically changed capital markets and really created discount brokerage. And I bring that up because, that event served as a catalyst for wealth creation for individual investors and empowering everyday investors to kind of take charge, which is very analogous to a lot of the work that's happening in the crypto community and specifically in the DeFi movement that really excites me. So I kind of wanted to share that because there's this synchronicity of goals in terms of democratizing finance and breaking down barriers. And as I mentioned earlier, really that leveling of the playing field. And I think there's value for all of us, as much as we're doing new things and breaking down, new and kind of pushing the envelope of doing things in a different way. I think it is important that we reflect back and learn from history. For those of you who read Matt Levine, and if you don't, I highly encourage his daily emails. It's a crash course in finance, but done with a healthy dose of wit and whimsy. He has this really neat quote about how Bitcoiners are relearning the lessons of financial history but at a much more accelerated pace. And I think that says a lot. I think there's a lot we can learn from, the disruption of the past as we continue to kind of, disrupt for the future. So with that, let me jump to my next slide. And I love to start with this line on the top because I'm still amazed how contrarian this view is that a Wall Street incumbent can heart both blockchain and Bitcoin versus the rhetoric of, oh, we only like blockchain, but we want nothing to do with Bitcoin. So I'm very proud to work at an organization where we actually see the potential of the technology, but also the emerging asset class and the ecosystem as a whole. What I wanted to share on this slide a little bit for context is, why we're doing it and how we think about it. And hopefully that helps you as you're having conversations with, other incumbents or regulators or, other investors to kind of, help them and kind of bring them on board. The first thing is, it really around this delta between nascency and necessity. And what I mean by that is, so I'll give you a cheeky example, bear with me. So prior to the virus grounding all of us, I traveled a lot. I live in, Silicon Valley, Menlo Park, but I spend quality time jetting between SFO and New York. And if you want to watch a group of adults turn into bratty toddlers, watch that United Wi-Fi drop for a few minutes. It's astounding. Everybody loses their marbles, right? But then you stop and you think and you go, here I am flying at 30,000 feet at 500 miles an hour, literally in a tin can. And this expectation of being connected with Wi-Fi is no longer a luxury. It's a necessity. And how quickly it went from a nice to have to need to have, right? It's cheeky, but it illustrates that point so beautifully. And even in finance, it was just 5-6 years ago, the notion of doing your banking or trading on your mobile app just seemed, yeah, that's nice. It's nice to have. But today, it's an absolute need to have. So this delta between, nascency and necessity shrinks so fast. And that's one of our thesis about why it's important that we're engaged in this arena, because today this may seem like a small thing that's important to, a small group of people, but it's growing exponentially and we want to be part of the journey. Last week, all the FANG companies or the mega companies reported their earnings. And one of my favorite quotes from the calls was the Microsoft call. And Satya Nadella made the point really eloquently that we have seen 2 years of digital disruption and digital transformation in a matter of 2 months. And that really sticks to me and I think applies to what we're doing is while things seem to move, it seems to us that things are moving slowly. I think all the puzzle pieces are coming together and we are going to see this Cambrian explosion. And, and that's why, it's very important to be part of the journey early on and kind of continue to learn. And then bringing it back to the client also here is your clients are going to have those same expectations, right? If I can use my mobile app to order pizza and track it along the way of the progress of the pizza making, guess what? If I want to open an account with TD Ameritrade, I am not willing to go through a painful process with no transparency. So this notion of liquid expectations, and we know our clients are interested in this technology and this asset class, so it's important for us to kind of lean in. The second one is really focusing on solving problems. I've always worked, as I mentioned, at commercializing new technologies, but really when it comes down to it, it's not so much about the technology. The litmus test I always apply is, and when I meet with startups that we might want to partner with, co-create with, or invest in, the questions I ask them is, what is the problem we are trying to solve here? Why is this problem worth solving? Because not all problems are worth solving. And third, why are you or us uniquely qualified to solve this problem? And I think those questions are really important because they do a few things. One, it gives you focus and it makes sure that you're doing it for the right reasons and it's not shiny object syndrome, which I have. I can be distracted very easily. Second, it gives you credibility. And, Commissioner Pierce mentioned this as well, is when you're trying to push for something new in an existing institution, you can't show up and just, razzle dazzle a bunch of, words and kind of create or play buzzword bingo. You really have to go in with purpose and with a clear statement of what problem are you trying to solve. And the gnarlier the problem, the better. What is that saying? Solve for painkillers, not vitamins. And I think that is so true of whether you're working with incumbents or even with investors or with, regulators. And, it also makes sure that you're not indulging in innovation theater. I meet a lot of startups in our category. And, I'm the first to say no to a lot of them because there is a lot of blockchain theater, right? And that's why we want to make sure we promote the ones that are really doing the tough work of solving meaningful problems, because that gives this ecosystem more credibility as well. And the flip side of that, if you're on the incumbent side or the investor side, I'm also very protective of the startups. I live in Silicon Valley. A lot of my colleagues want to come out to, the Valley and meet with a startup. And my first question is why? What is it that you want to get out of it? This is an innovation petting zoo. These startup founders are doing a lot of work building a company. We don't want to waste their time. So I think it goes both ways, is having that clarifying statement really kind of grounds people in terms of the purpose. The third one kind of touches on the story I shared about May Day. Our genesis was rooted in the fact of that May Day rule change, and the ethos of our company has always been built on this notion of bringing Wall Street to Main Street, right? Enabling access using the best technology of the time. We were one of the first firms to launch touch-tone phone trading back when people had landlines and touch-tone phones, believe it or not. We were one of the first to enable online trading, mobile trading. So for us, this is a nice sequitur to that journey. The twist I like to say is, in this case, we're taking something that's a Main Street product and bringing it to Wall Street, right? But again, the ethos of bringing that access and ensuring that, clients have no barriers is very central to what we do. And the fourth reason, as I mentioned, very much client-focused and client-driven. And it kind of puts all the other three reasons together with it to package up the thesis. Listen, when you have a direct line to over 15 million clients who call you, email you, trade with you every day and aren't shy about telling you what they want or don't want, it really, makes sure that you focus on what's important, and, from a problem statement perspective. And in fact, the biggest tailwind we've had in terms of leaning into this category has very much been client driven. So as my next slide loads, so about a year ago, 9 months ago, when I formally and full-time moved into this role, I asked our teams, on all of our platforms, let's just ask a benign question. Who's interested in crypto trading? Do they want to learn about crypto? Are they currently trading crypto? And this is an example of one of those messages on our trading platforms. I thought, listen, if 10 people click on it or email me, I'm happy, right? It gives me some, additional backing to my business case that I can use with my senior leaders and the board. Oh my God. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of, emails. So first of all, I had to tell my team, well, they can't email me anymore because I'm drowning. We have to centralize this in another email box. But it was really heartening and really validating that our clients, what the clients were telling us. Many of them were like, listen, I'm already doing it, but I want to do it with you and do it all in the same place. Others were like, listen, I hear about this thing called Bitcoin and Ethereum and all other buzzwords that I don't really understand. I don't want to feel dumb. Where can I learn? So the persistent and consistent feedback and demand from our clients really was the best accelerant to this journey. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the clients we represent are the retail investors and the RIA community. So it's, should be heartening to all of you builders and founders that there's actually a very big tent of people who want to engage. They just want, the right pathway to do it and the right education. And then, the other point we learned in, hearing from our clients is there's a range, right? the clients, their interest, they range from savvy to skeptic, right? But the one consistent is they're all very curious. And even the ones that are skeptical, and I talk to them a lot, and my message to them is pretty simple. It's totally kosher to be skeptical. Listen, when I got into it, 2012, it took me like a good 9 months to wrap my head around it, to fully, kind of make sense of all of it. So it's okay to be skeptical and ask hard questions, but it is no longer kosher to be apathetic. And I think that really sticks. We actually hosted our annual conference for our advisor community at the end of May, before the world got turned upside down. And we hosted a full one-day learning session around digital assets for the RIAs. And at the kickoff session, at one point in a room full of 2,000 RIAs, I asked the question, how many of you believe Bitcoin is a fad? And barely any hands went up, and these RIAs are not shy. And I was surprised. I was actually expecting many more skeptics. So I reframed the question and said, how many of you would have raised your hand a year ago or 2 years ago? And a massive number of hands went up. So it's really interesting that we are at this inflection point where even the RIAs or retail clients, and the current macroeconomic conditions are another accelerant, because a number of our clients and our branches that have come to me and said, listen, my clients are asking about crypto and Bitcoin specifically, and they want to learn. I think it's a really opportune time for our community to step up and offer that education and kind of welcome in kind of the next wave of participants. So based on all of that client feedback, the way we framed our strategy is really a three-pronged approach. One is really around products and services. So what products and services are we uniquely qualified, given our current business and our core competencies, to stand up in this category? And our focus really is access at scale. When we build and launch something, it's not for 100 people, 1,000 people. Potentially 10 million clients can have access to it. So that scale component is critical. The second is really, how do we enable choice? I am of the view that the more on-ramps and the more instruments we turn on, the better, right? If somebody wants to engage with this asset class via a futures product, excellent. If somebody wants to do it via ETF, great. I don't want to be the decider. My job is to work with regulators and partners to enable as many choices. My goal, my nirvana would be one day when you log into your trading platform, on one side is your fiat portfolio and all the ways that you can engage with traditional capital markets, and on the other side is an analogous crypto portfolio and all the different instruments through which you can access this asset class. The third, which is really near and dear to me, is really around usability. Granted, we have come a long way. I remember buying my first Bitcoin in 2012, and let me tell you, that was a Herculean effort. And all the early folks remember, you really had to be committed if you wanted to access digital assets, and things have gotten much, much better, but I think we still have a long way to go. That's one feedback I get consistently from our clients, is there's too much jargon, there's or what seems like too much complexity, or too many words they don't understand. And so, these are the people have finite amount of investable assets. Are they going to go into something they already understand and know how to operate? Or are they going to go into something that is too blurry for them? So I think that's where usability and education is just so critical. The second area is partnerships and investments. And this is where, we look to partner with startups in the ecosystem where we can co-create, and thinking about what can we bring to the table, what can you bring to the table, so together it can be a force multiplier. So some areas that are very interesting and where we're doing a lot of work is around infrastructure. I think there's a Jim Barksdale quote, there's only two ways to make money: bundling and unbundling. And I think the digital assets ecosystem is kind of going through some of that. There's bundling, there's unbundling, there's so we're kind of looking looking at some opportunities in that arena where, you can really develop some specifications and specificity of some of the attributes. And I think the other area is really around DeFi. And that may sound counterintuitive for somebody from quote unquote CeFi to say that they're interested in DeFi. But I go back to our earlier thesis, right? It's a new way of doing something. Its goal is to break down barriers, which is very core to our mission. While we may not jump into it, at first, we want to learn, we want to engage. So one of the things we recently announced was a partnership with the Chicago DeFi Alliance. Suna from Volt Capital, along with DRW Trading, Jump, ourselves, and CMT kind of have banded together to say, how can the traditional trading ecosystem work with and partner with the DeFi ecosystem? What can we learn from the DeFi community? But also, what can we share back to the DeFi community? Again, going back to the Matt Levine quote, hopefully accelerate your learnings of what you need to learn, whether it's working with the regulators or as usability, things that we've learned over 40 years, we can, kind of share with you sooner, and you don't have to kind of make the same mistakes, hopefully, right? And the last area I'll touch on very quickly is education and advocacy. This really is near and dear to me, and a place where we've done a lot of heavy lifting in the last year. We believe education is the silver bullet. Over the years, we've done a lot of research and analytics, and we know that an educated investor is a more empowered investor and thereby a more active investor. So starting with education is a no-brainer, but even more important when it comes to digital assets, just given, the nascency and the perceived complexity of it. Listen, as I mentioned in 2012, when I was trying to learn about it, there wasn't a lot of resources. Today, there's a Cambrian explosion of content. But one thing that we've learned listening to our clients is taking that content, but really making it much more kitchen English, right? Kind of making it analogous to things they already know and understand and are comfortable with, versus trying to make it more technical, similar to usability, less focus around product development from a technical perspective and more so from a customer focused perspective. So that kitchen English component is important. And then the other is kind of distribution of that content in a diversity of modalities, which is we will show up, go where the consumer is. So if somebody wants to read the white paper, excellent. But if somebody wants, a series of bite-sized videos that they can consume on the go, not that these days we're on the go, but, in the course of things that they're doing during the day, that's great. So, those are some, we even have live coaches that do one-on-one calls. When we did live events, we used to do workshops around digital assets. So really showing up in all kinds of different ways. We recently just did a series around halving. As you know, it's a big topic. But again, if you're not part of the crypto community already, you hear things like Bitcoin halving or halvening, they can seem scary. So we really did kind of a education component that kind of broke it down. So I'll kind of stop there and I'll look for questions that maybe, because I know we're coming up to time, but hopefully these have been some things that you can take away as you work. And the other part of education and advocacy is really a lot of the work we do with our regulators. As quaint as it sounds, I'm in the business of asking for permission, not forgiveness. And we know we have to do these things with a high degree of prudence and responsibility. And I think the point the commissioner made is very important. Crypto is near and dear and central. We live and breathe it every day. But regulators are trying to work with 1,000 different things. So again, as we work with them, how do we kind of, make it a part and parcel of other things we're working with them on, and really kind of bring them along on the journey with us. So let me just flip back here.
All right. So I just put you back on screen. We probably have time for just one question. So
Okay.
Can you just pick the one you like the most?
Okay, excellent. Your presentation is so hot. I'll take it. No, that's not a question. So I think there's a question about DeFi to your investors. I think that's a really good question. As I mentioned earlier, we're in the early stages of our exploration around DeFi, and one of the big steps that we've taken really is, forming the Chicago DeFi Alliance. And if any of you are interested in participating, I think it's location agnostic. Feel free to connect with me, and I can share more information. But that's one of the first steps that we're taking, and really looking at how can we invest in this community. And then in the future, how can we take part in terms of product development and extending some of the offerings to our consumers where it might make sense.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the really great talk. It was really educational. We're going to switch over to our next session now. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.